In November 2024, 524 people stood in Accra and took an oath of allegiance. Most of them were African Americans. They were becoming citizens of Ghana. And when it was over, grown adults waved flags and cried. Not because they found opportunity, because they found something they couldn't name. Something they'd been missing their entire lives. This isn't a trickle, it's a pattern. Since 2019, at least 1,500 African Americans have moved to Ghana. Thousands more have gone to Kenya,
Rwanda,
South Africa, Benin. They're teachers, nurses, tech workers, entrepreneurs, and they're not coming back. The movement has a name, Blaxit, Black Exit, and it's accelerating. Here's what's driving it. In 2024, 34% of Americans said they wanted to live abroad. That's up from 10% in 1974. But for Black Americans, the reasons go deeper than economics or adventure. They're leaving because staying feels unsustainable, because the weight of navigating racism every single day has become unbearable, and because, for the first time in generations, there are places actively welcoming them home. Ghana started it. In 2018, President Nana Akufo-Addo traveled to Washington and issued an invitation. Come home, the year of return. It was time to mark 400 years since the first enslaved Africans arrived in Jamestown, Virginia, in 1619. Ghana wasn't just offering tourism, it was offering identity, belonging, a pathway to citizenship for anyone descended from the transatlantic slave trade, and people responded. In 2019 alone, 750,000 visitors came to Ghana, most from the United States. The program brought in $1.9 billion. But more importantly, it brought people who stayed, entrepreneurs who opened businesses, families who enrolled their children in Ghanaian schools, retirees who bought land. And in November 2024, 524 of them became citizens in the single largest naturalization ceremony in Ghana's history. Kekia Bowers was one of them. She moved from Florida to Ghana in 2023 with her husband and 2 children. She said when she got her Ghanaian passport, she cried, not for herself, for her ancestors, the ones who were taken from this coast in chains, the ones who never made it back. That passport, she said, is for them.
But my ancestors who wanted to return and come back home, those ancestors who never made it back, their dying wish was to come back to their home, and they never made it. That passport for me is for them.
This isn't nostalgia. It's survival. Austin Holloman, an American YouTuber who settled in Nairobi, said the social fabric in the United States is broken. He feels safer in Kenya, not because crime is lower. It's not. But because he doesn't have to think about his skin color every time he leaves the house. People look like me, he said. I fit in here.
So I picked Kenya because I feel the safest here. People look similar to me.
Adila Mohammed runs a relocation company in Kenya. She moved there 4 days after her mother's funeral. Now she helps other African Americans make the same transition. House hunting, banking, healthcare, all of it. By April 2025, she'd helped 15 families relocate. She calls it a movement. Their shackles are being broken, she said. Chains are being thrown away mentally. But this movement didn't start in 2019. It started centuries ago. The idea of African Americans returning to Africa goes back to the 1820s when emancipated Black people founded Liberia. Marcus Garvey championed it in the 1920s with his Back to Africa movement. W.E.B. Du Bois moved to Ghana in 1961 at age 93 and is buried in Accra. Maya Angelou lived there, wrote about it. The pull has always existed, but for most of history, the infrastructure didn't. Now it does. Ghana offers right of abode to anyone of African descent. Live there indefinitely, work, invest. After 5 years of residency, you can apply for citizenship. The application costs $980. Not cheap. But compared to what people are leaving behind, it's manageable. Sierra Leone goes further. If you can prove DNA ancestry, citizenship is fast-tracked. Benin is moving toward granting citizenship to anyone who can trace their roots to Africa. Rwanda is actively recruiting Black Americans with business skills. The doors are open. Kenya has become another hotspot, a welcoming atmosphere, strong expat communities, Nairobi especially. The cost of living is lower than major US cities. Housing in Nairobi ranges from $500 to $2,000 a month depending on location. Meals at inexpensive restaurants cost around $2. Healthcare is affordable with private insurance averaging $100 per person monthly. And for remote workers earning US salaries, the currency arbitrage is significant, but it's not all paradise. Adwoa Davis, a therapist who moved from Washington, D.C. to Accra in 2020, warns that trauma doesn't disappear with a change of location. "You're coming here expecting that everybody's black, so I'm going to be okay," she said. But then you get here and you're being othered. African Americans arriving in Ghana or Kenya aren't seen as locals. They're seen as diaspora, Americans, rich foreigners. And that creates its own tensions. In Accra, the influx of African Americans has driven up costs. Francis Adoti, a pharmacist who's lived in OSU all his life, said he can't afford to eat at restaurants in his own neighborhood anymore. A meal for his family costs at least $100. His monthly salary is $300. The restaurants are charging according to the pockets of the foreigners, he said. The shops are targeting the expatriates because they have the financial wherewithal. Ghana's government defends the program. Akwasi Awiwa Ababio from the Office of Diaspora Affairs said it's a win-win. African Americans bring expertise, investment, skills. The government waived survey and registration fees for diaspora members, negotiated with local chiefs to give them access to prime land, granted citizenship to those who'd been living in Ghana for years. "We want to make access easier for them to make them feel at home," he said. The economic argument is real. Between 2019 and 2023, Ghana's tourism sector surged. Festivals like Afrochella and Afro Nation drew thousands. Celebrities visited. Usher, Ludacris, Kendrick Lamar, Steve Harvey. The visibility put Ghana on the global map at a time when the economy was struggling. And African Americans who stayed started businesses. Real estate, transport, technology, entertainment. They created jobs, generated tax revenue, brought capital. But for the people moving, it's not primarily about money. It's about peace. Rashad Mscrory moved from Harlem to Ghana in 2020. He acknowledged he left poverty behind. "Here, we're rich," he said. But that's not why he left. He left because of the stop-and frisks. The police encounters that left him in tears. The constant violation. "I'd rather have the moral dilemma of being in a higher class in the system of classism," he said, than being marginalized in the system of oppression and racism. That sentiment is everywhere. Twana Hines watched January 6, 2021 from her Washington, D.C. home, watched people storm the Capitol, and decided it was time to leave. "They were there to hang Mike Pence," she said, "a straight white conservative married Christian man. I thought, no one is saving this country." She moved to Portugal later that year. Not Africa, but the impulse was the same. Leave. The political environment accelerated the trend. Trump's re-election in November 2024 triggered another wave. But this isn't about one president. It's about decades of accumulated exhaustion, police shootings, mass incarceration, voter suppression, housing discrimination, healthcare disparities. The murder of George Floyd in 2020 was a breaking point for many. The racial reckoning that followed made people realize that reform wasn't coming, that systemic racism wasn't being dismantled, that they had to save themselves. And Africa offered something America couldn't. A place where being black wasn't a political statement, where skin color wasn't a liability, where you could walk down the street without wondering if this was the day. That psychological relief is what people talk about most. Not the beaches, not the weather, the absence of fear, but the challenges are real. Several African countries have harsh anti-LGBTQ laws. In Uganda, gay sex can result in life imprisonment or death. Ghana passed similar legislation. Kenya criminalizes homosexuality. For LGBTQ African Americans, moving to Africa means trading one form of oppression for another. Some go anyway. They point out that violence against transgender people is rising in the US, that anti-LGBTQ bills are proliferating, that depending on what you're escaping, Africa might still be worth it. The class divide is stark. Most African Americans moving to Ghana or Kenya are middle class or higher. They have savings, remote jobs, entrepreneurial capital. They're not struggling. Rashad McCrory acknowledged this. He started a scholarship fund, built a soccer field for neighborhood kids, tried to give back. But the reality is that diaspora wealth creates resentment. When a family earning $300 a month watches American expats spend that on a single dinner, it creates friction. Social media has amplified the movement. Groups like Blaxit Tribe have over 50,000 members. YouTube channels document the transition. Instagram influencers post about life in Accra or Nairobi. The visibility makes it real, makes it possible. Shannon Akosua Maji, president of the African American Association of Ghana, said millennials and Gen Z are leading the charge. With Snapchat and Instagram, you can be in Ghana every day, she said. People have shifted their mindsets. The African American Association of Ghana has over 300 paid members. Annual membership costs 200 Ghana cedis for residents, $50 for those outside Ghana. The association connects newcomers, helps with logistics, provides community, because moving to a new continent is isolating. Even when you feel like you belong, you're still figuring out systems, bureaucracy, culture. Having a network matters. The numbers are hard to pin down. Ghana's Diaspora Affairs Office confirmed at least 1,500 African Americans moved to Ghana between 2019 and 2023, but that's only counting those who registered. Many live on annual residency permits. Some stay part-time. Estimates suggest up to 5,000 African Americans now have some presence in Ghana. Kenya's numbers are similar. And when you add Rwanda, South Africa, Senegal, Benin, and other destinations, the total easily reaches tens of thousands. This isn't a fad, it's a realignment. African countries are waking up to the value of diaspora engagement, not just for tourism, for long-term investment, skills transfer, political influence. Ghana's Beyond the Return program runs through 2029. Rwanda is building infrastructure specifically for diaspora entrepreneurs. South Africa is easing pathways to permanent residency. These are strategic initiatives, and they're working. For the United States, this is a loss. Rafael Obanio, a public policy expert at UN Habitat, said it plainly. America is losing talent, resources, the narrative that America is the land of dreams, that it's a viable place for anyone, that there's abundance of opportunity, social cohesion, stability. The exodus dents that story. It reveals cracks, and it's happening when America can least afford it. Brain drain is real. African immigrants to the United States are among the most educated groups in the country. 48.9% hold college degrees, double the rate of native-born white Americans, nearly 4 times the rate of native-born black Americans. Nigerian Americans lead at 58.6%, Egyptian Americans at 59.7%. These are doctors, engineers, scientists, entrepreneurs. The kind of talent every country wants. And now some of their children are reversing course, taking that education and expertise back to Africa. The irony is sharp. For centuries, Africa lost its people to slavery and colonialism, then to brain drain as educated Africans sought opportunities in the West. Now the descendants of those taken in chains are choosing to return, and they're bringing capital, skills, networks. This is reverse migration at scale, and it's reshaping both sides of the Atlantic. The future of this movement depends on whether African countries can sustain it. Can they maintain infrastructure, keep costs reasonable, ensure safety, provide healthcare, create economic opportunity? Ghana's economy is fragile, inflation is high, power outages are common. Kenya faces similar challenges. For African Americans earning US salaries remotely, these issues are manageable. But if the economy deteriorates further, or if remote work becomes less viable, the calculus changes. Still, the pull is undeniable. Deja Gordon moved from Brooklyn to Ghana in 2019, opened a food truck selling Jamaican food, built it from scratch. When she got citizenship in November 2024, she was giddy. It just feels good to have a connection to an African country as an African American, she said. Because back in America, we don't have anything to trace our roots to but Africa. That's the emotional core. Identity, roots, belonging. These aren't economic calculations, they're existential needs. And for many African Americans, the United States has failed to provide them. So they're finding them elsewhere, on a continent they were taught to forget. In countries that are now saying, "We remember you, come home." This isn't everyone's solution. Millions of Black Americans will stay in the United States. We'll keep fighting for change. We'll build community and resilience where they are. But for those who leave, It's not about giving up. It's about choosing life, about deciding that they don't have to endure what their parents and grandparents endured, that survival isn't the only option, that maybe somewhere else they can actually thrive. And that choice, multiplied across thousands of people, is changing the conversation about race, about belonging, about what freedom actually means. Because if home is where you feel safe, where you're not constantly reminded of your otherness, where you can just exist without explanation, then for some African Americans, home isn't in America anymore. It's across the Atlantic, in places their ancestors were stolen from, and now, finally, they're going back.